I guess you could say I'm haunted by the past. Sounds cliché, right? But when you've seen what I've seen, it tends to stick with you. Our town was a quiet place, barely a blip on the map. Everyone knew everyone, and the most trouble we'd ever seen was the odd case of public drunkenness or a petty theft. That all changed one night in our southern Texas town. I was new to the force back then, still wet behind the ears, they'd say. My radio squawked into life in the middle of the night one night, disturbing the usual static. Dispatch was on the line. The woman's voice was shaky. Reports of screams coming from the Pearsons' ranch house on the outskirts. Quick note, the names in this story have been changed for the sake of anonymity. My gut twisted. The Pearsons were a good family. I answered dispatch. Byron here. Who was the caller on that? Dispatch soon replied. The caller wished to remain anonymous. All right, on my way. To be honest, unease festered inside me at that moment. After about 25 to 30 minutes, I pulled up to the Pearson ranch. The first thing that hit me was the silence. Not the comforting quiet like before, but an oppressive one. No insects chirping, not even wind rustling through the trees, just dead silence. The house was pitch black, save for one flickering porch light. Its feeble glow threw monstrous shadows across the yard. I shivered despite the summer heat. A chill of dread ran down my spine. I got out and approached the house, my flashlight in hand. The moment I opened that door, the smell hit me like a punch in the gut. Metallic, rotten. I swallowed down the bile rising in my throat. The house was even more silent somehow, quiet as a grave. Each creak of the floorboards under my weight sounded like a gunshot. The faint light from the flashlight danced over splashes of red on the floor and walls. I'd seen enough horror films to know what it was, but nothing prepares you for the real thing. Navigating the house was like wading through molasses. Each step took me deeper into the horror, and with it, the evidence of a struggle was clear as day. Furniture knocked over, frames shattered, a streak of that dreadful red across the wallpaper. The silence was replaced by the thump of my heart in my ears and the ragged sound of my breathing. The wooden floor creaked under my weight, every groan of the aged timber echoing my growing terror. It was the living room where I found them. The family of four I'd known for years, the Pearsons, now unrecognizable. They'd been skinned alive. Their vacant eyes stared into nothingness, faces twisted in a haunted way, screams frozen in time. I stood rooted to the spot, my mind rejecting the scene before me, but the raw, bloodied bodies didn't lie. Racing out of that hellish place, I doubled over in the bushes, vomiting until my stomach clenched in painful spasms. I'd seen bodies before, car crashes, heart attacks, even someone who had taken their own life once. But nothing could have prepared me for that grotesque spectacle inside. It was like the most nightmarish painting come to life. I'd stumbled right into the heart of darkness, the ugly, horrible side of humanity. The cool night air did little to soothe me. I could still smell the metallic tang of blood, the putrid scent of decay lingering in my nostrils. I gasped, sucking in lungfuls of air, trying to purge the image seared into my mind. It was then I noticed a symbol scratched into the wooden door frame, a mark I'd seen before in confidential files down at the station, one of the Mexican cartel's calling card. Gritting my teeth, I pulled out my radio. Dispatch answered on the first ring. I relayed the scene to her, my voice a tight, clipped monotone. I heard her sharp intake of breath as I mentioned the cartel's mark. The line went silent for a moment before she promised to send backup. Then all was quiet again. I paced the yard, hands shaking, heart pounding like a drum in my chest. I waited for backup. All the while, my mind played a twisted game on me. forcing the looping images of the carnage inside into my head. I kept coming back to that mark. The cartel had reached our quiet town, leaving their bloody message on a family's doorstep. My skin crawled at the thought. I prayed this wasn't the start of a war that our small town force was ill-equipped to handle. And right then, all I could do was wait, trapped in a horror I couldn't escape. Those long minutes waiting for backup felt like hours. Alone in the dark, my thoughts turned over the gruesome scene I'd witnessed. The image of the family, brutally disfigured, was etched into my mind. The peace of my small town felt like a distant memory, tainted by the violent presence of the cartel. The quiet streets and friendly faces were marred by a bloody, unseen horror. Then it hit me. A realization which sent a fresh wave of cold dread washing over me. The screams. The initial report that led me here. They weren't from the Pearsons. The Pearsons' ranch was too far removed from the other residents for anyone to hear, much too far from the road for passersby to hear it. But someone had. Someone who was close enough. My heart pounded in my chest. The dispatcher's words echoed in my mind. The caller wished to remain anonymous. The dread coiled around my gut, pushing me back to my cruiser. Safety was just across the yard. My legs felt like lead as I forced myself to move. I reached for the handle when I saw it. Bloody handprints smeared across my cruiser's windows. The sight nearly took my breath away. They had been watching me. I retired from the force not long after that. The weight of that night was too much to bear. Now, years later, I'm just an old man haunted by memories. I've told this story before, at bars, at gatherings, even around campfires. Each retelling is like peeling a scab off an old wound. It hurts, but maybe that's my penance. The bloody handprints never left me, a cruel memento from the darkest moment of my life. I'll always wonder about the person who called in that night. Did they know what they were leading me into? Were they the one who left those bloody handprints on my cruiser? Were they the one watching? I suppose I'll never know. The memory of that night is like a shadow, always there, lurking at the edges of my mind. It's my own personal horror story, a chilling tale that still sends shivers down my spine, reminding me of a peace forever shattered, and how close I came to being skinned alive myself.